everybody, this is Lynn Marape and Alan Walker. Welcome to the FinTalk podcast, your one-stop shop for all things fintech and YDPay. Today, Alan and I will be wrapping up our conversation on cross-border payments by discussing the challenges and opportunities associated with cross-border payments, particularly as it pertains to cryptocurrency. So, Alan, just jumping right into it, cryptocurrency has over the years become an alternative that is increasing in popularity. However, it still largely remains an enigma to the ordinary person. So would you mind demystifying this for us?
I think from a journey of cryptocurrency, it's probably good to kind of start behind the ethos of how it originated. So kind of in the early 2010s, most of us were not even thinking about, especially at my age, I was a lot younger, we were kind of in survival as opposed to kind of wealth growth stages.
Right.
And during that era there, we'd obviously come out of the 2008 financial crisis. To not pull any punches, essentially that 2008 financial crisis was ultimately caused by greed, by a lot of the big banks, subprime lending. There's a lot of very exciting movies on that, which I've actually thoroughly enjoyed. But the core came out of it is, the banks ultimately that were involved were 100% at fault. It wasn't even negligence or accidents. It was deliberate. They essentially took these financial instruments that were in fact in some cases worth less than zero, and sold them into markets at a hyperinflated price. So this. And then we saw the US bank bailouts. We saw bailouts happening internationally. So as what happened is it kind of caused a financial uprising, and unlike years gone by, the Margaret Thatcher strike eras, what came out of this was firstly a mistrust of the big banking systems, but more importantly, the creation of call it a technology, because that's ultimately what it is. It is a digital technology that removed the control of currencies and these financial instruments completely out of, firstly, the government, the big banks, and large financial institutions. What that ultimately meant is the creators of those algorithms, the creators of ultimately what became the blockchain, they created something with call it a very good idea. It sounded like morally, ethically, we're fighting against the big banks, we're fighting against the government, and it served quite a lot of traction. But ultimately, with everything we see, as soon as something becomes monetized and has some value attached to it, a lot happens in the ecosystem. We've seen some pretty significant scams occurring. Here in South Africa, we're not unique to that. We've seen some of the biggest cryptocurrencies or crypto exchanges, FTX very recently, where essentially they overinflated their value. The exchanges collapsed and people lost their money. So the concept of having something that was completely outside of a central power of control and outside of a central government, all of a sudden, I don't want to say the wheels came off, because I think the technology is very sound. The distributed nature is exactly what the objectives of that initial blockchain was created for. But ultimately, greed does get in the way. And we've had a couple of blips along that journey. When I say we, I mean as a society. But ultimately, cryptocurrency and blockchain is a way we can represent a currency in a digital format. So there's no, physical note you can carry. You can't pull out, a Bitcoin out of your wallet and make a payment with it. It exists 100% on the internet space. Taking it a step forward and not trying to overcomplicate it, but that blockchain or that cryptocurrency can actually exist either in a centralized format, in which case, like we had with FTX, where your coins or your currency sits on a central exchange, and when that exchange collapses, you lose all your, call it your money. Or it can exist in call it a non-custodial wallet, where the wallet's actually held privately by you. The coins or the currency sits 100% in that wallet. And for that reason, I favor and I tend towards the idea of owning, that wallet. And there's a very prominent slogan going around cryptocurrency, which I'll probably repeat a couple of times in the session, where it's not my key, not my coin, or not my key, not my money. And what this ultimately means is if your private key, which is used to actually sign off or to ensure the coins where they owned and no one can get into them or steal them from you, there's two options. They're either owned by a central exchange, like we have with our bank. Our money sits in our bank account. We actually entrust the bank that when I log on every day, that money's still there. Or alternatively, the keys could potentially sit with me, and it's like it's sitting in my back pocket in my wallet, where my notes and what have you sit in there as well. But yeah, the cryptocurrency, there's a lot to unpack. I'm very excited to hear what your next question is going to look like, because it is ultimately, it's a very exciting technology. I think we're still very much at the early days of what cryptocurrency is going to look like. Call it my passion and excitement of what cryptocurrency and blockchain can actually bring to the African continent in particular. Firstly, it eliminates a lot of the uncertainty around, particularly in Africa, where we have governments changing perhaps on a far too regular basis. And those governments that come in significantly change the monetary policies. They significantly change the way the country operates, often resulting in hyperinflations, like we've seen in Zimbabwe, like we've seen in Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya. Every African state has kind of gone through something like that. And ultimately, moving to a digital currency eliminates a lot of that risk. And more importantly, it potentially opens up anyone in the continent to essentially have a digital bank account without the need to have a bank account, if that makes a bit more sense. So you could kind of be in the middle of nowhere, have no access to traditional points of sale, credit card, debit card ecosystems, and be able to transact with another person at a purely digital layer, using your mobile device. Even at sometimes using a mobile device in areas that have very poor or no cell phone signal by some of the technologies we've built in that ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, definitely a lot to unpack. Like you said, it's a very broad topic, and we'll probably actually have, multiple episodes on cryptocurrency alone going forward. And, my next official question was going to be around, the scams that you had briefly mentioned in terms of the criminal activity. You said that greed gets in the way, whether your money is digital or physical. But I wanted to quickly just follow up on something that you said with regards to, keeping it in a positive space and what exactly excites you about the cryptocurrency. And you said, it eliminates a lot of the risk, especially with regards to how governments change regulations at the drop of a hat, but obviously, there are pros and cons to everything. So I wanted to ask you, what factors are at play with regards to the value of cryptocurrency? Because I think a lot of people have seen, whether it's on TV or what have you, where people are just looking at those, it looks like you're looking at stocks actually, where it just rises and falls, and, there's so many factors at play. So can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, taking us back to, a couple of weeks ago when we spoke about foreign exchange rates, cryptocurrency operates in the exact same way. It's essentially call it a very naively a floated currency.
Okay.
And the value of that currency is dictated by supply and demand. So there's two mechanisms. One, there's a limited number of call it cryptocurrencies, actual coins per cryptocurrency. I think there's a significant number of cryptocurrencies. I think we're upwards to almost 10,000 different cryptocurrencies, but we only know kind of the major ones. And there's nothing to stop you, Lynn, creating a Lynn coin. You can literally, I don't want to say it's a simple process, but it's significantly more simple than trying to create a new country and a new currency.
Of course,
But essentially, the supply is controlled. It's quite expensive, computationally expensive to create new coins in the major market coins. So that's one area that's applying a bit of pressure to the pricing. And then the other side is obviously the demand.
Right.
So a lot of that demand is quite speculative. A lot of those scams you alluded to are, and if you're on Telegram or any of those major, call it trading platforms, you'll often get an invite from somebody saying, I can guarantee you a 200% return on a monthly basis. We use Bitcoin, pay me X number, and you'll get your money tripled. The reality is, if something sounds too good to be true, it often is, and in fact, it almost always is. So a lot of the cryptocurrency scams are kind of, once again, going back to that human nature of greed. Where I want to triple my money in 30 days without having to do any work. But the reality is, if it doesn't exist in, call it a major market, trading gold or copper, it probably doesn't exist in cryptocurrency. But obviously, like every other traded commodity, shocks do happen in the market. Obviously, when FTX collapsed, we saw a significant drop in the value of Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's been a significant court case happening in the US at the moment, where the SEC has taken one of the biggest. They're essentially a coin and an exchange and a service provider in the Bitcoin space, but that's Ripple. They have their own coin. And it's been heavily watched extensively globally as well. The good news is it looks like the SEC at this point has essentially, I don't want to say lost, but essentially they have no longer have a case against Ripple. It's still a long journey ahead of us, but kind of we're sitting at, call it 1-0 in the Ripple favor. And because they obviously have the funds to take on the SEC, it's been quite an interesting dynamic, outside of the value of coins. But, when essentially the biggest financial controlling institution in the world, the SEC, takes on, call it the biggest cryptocurrency provider in the world, shockwaves are bound to happen. And it's definitely, it seems to be playing out the way I'd hoped it to play out, but more importantly, what I think was actually a fair and fairly level-headed decision. But that being said, there are obviously some pretty big exchanges out there that, there's, I don't want to say warning signs, but like every business, they go through their ebbs and flows. Binance is going through a significant restructuring exercise at the moment. There's some very big entities that have contracts terminated, that have had resources leave the entity. I don't want to say it's the beginning of the end, but obviously, like everything in life, wait and watch.
Yeah. Honestly, there's definitely a lot to say about that, but I want to just take a quick ad break to hear a word from our sponsors, YD Pay. While you guys ruminate over that, we'll be back in a second. With over 15 years experience in African solutions, YDPay sources the best rates without hidden fees, all while ensuring that your data is secured and protected within their global technology stack. Built with the best-of-breed technology solutions with inbuilt compliance, banking, and reporting frameworks, YDPay's service-based framework provides multi-currency pay-in and pay-out solutions for both fiat and blockchain solutions. Getting started is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Register on the YDPay platform, upload your identity and residential documents, and voila! You're ready to send and receive payments in 40 currencies. Sending and receiving money has never been this quick and easy. So what are you waiting for? Start transacting today. This message is sponsored by YDPay, the safest and easiest way to connect with Africa. Now, back to the show. And we're back. So, I want to just continue the conversation now with regards to the criminal activity, with regards to cryptocurrency and everything like that. And you already mentioned this huge court case. So, a lot of criminal activity has taken place in the world of cryptocurrency. This has undoubtedly increased regulatory supervision. So, talk to me about the regulations regarding cryptocurrency in context of cross-border payments and what your platform, what YDPay offers in the way of risk mitigation.
Yep. So that really is, I wanted to say the $1 million question, but it's probably the $100 billion question at the moment. Is around how does a government which doesn't own the cryptocurrency coin, it doesn't own the blockchain layer, it doesn't have any controlling, manage that risk. And specifically in Africa, there's been kind of 3 regulatory routes that the countries have followed. The first one is to establish a regulatory framework for cryptocurrency, and that often forms part of the existing, call it monetary or policies and procedures around cross-border payments or any form of currency control. The second option is the direct opposite of that, is to completely ban cryptocurrency. But once again, that's another challenge, and that how do you ban something that is completely distributed in nature? You can't, as a government, impose a ban on somebody downloading an app from an app store or being able to send a message over the internet. It becomes quite difficult to actually enforce that ban. And then the third option, which makes it slightly more difficult in the market, is a kind of wait and see approach, where many of the governments, and I would say almost all of them except for a handful, either sitting in the first 2 categories, have really adopted a wait and see approach, where they more than likely have sent out letters or recommendations that the government doesn't have control over cryptocurrency. It's high risk. If something goes wrong, they can't help you. Essentially saying that they're not controlling it, they're not managing it, there's no rules, but a rule might happen in the future, and that rule might either be to ban it or to allow it with certain conditions. The 2 biggest markets in Africa on cryptocurrencies, South Africa and Nigeria, are actually quite far down that regulatory process. The Financial Conduct Authority in South Africa has published a number of regulations and rules around what it means to be a cryptocurrency exchange. But once again, they talk about the actual exchange of the currencies. But what happens if I'm simply an app provider, or I'm an app developer that has built a wallet where I actually don't hold the funds, I don't control the funds. Essentially, I'm an app developer that needs to be seen as a wallet manufacturer. I run a little factory, I print some leather out. Lynn gets the Alan Walker wallet. It's a nice leather wallet, it's fashionable, you like it. You put your dollars and rands into that wallet, you walk around in the street. If somebody mugs you and steals your wallet, you don't get to come back to the wallet maker and say, you're accountable to my wallet that was stolen. So there's a lot of gray area around cryptocurrency. Nigeria has adopted a very similar approach, but once again, mainly focusing on the exchanges. And there's certain regulations whether you're actually doing the exchange versus whether you are using a third party for the exchange, or even if you're a wallet provider. So, the kind of 60,000 foot view is cryptocurrency globally has regulations, but as a platform, we really see the benefit that cryptocurrency has to Africa. We're particularly excited of that. We are always on the side of wanting to, and in fact, it's enforced where we adhere to government regulations. But we've also adopted a view that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you onboard on our platform and you're wanting to use cryptocurrency, the same regulations that we expect to see at the banks, we want to kind of bring that into the cryptocurrency. If your trading is legitimate, if your source of funds is legitimate, the fact that you've got cryptocurrency should not necessarily, you should see it exactly the same as you do any other currency. So we want to onboard you with your full know your customers, full KYC, full anti-money laundering checks. We don't differentiate with that. And we've actually, we're bringing and we brought a very exciting blockchain and cryptocurrency product to Africa. We partnered with a technology platform that has done something completely different in the cryptocurrency space. That's Send Crypto, where they have the same model as to what YDPay wants to do, where they're essentially a wallet provider or a wallet solution, and they allow you to integrate whatever wallet you currently have and get the whole benefits of the YDPay and Send Crypto ecosystem. They've also eliminated all of the costs. So for the first time, many of the coins have no cost for transferring through to one person to another, one person to a business. And more importantly, in collaboration with the YDPay ecosystem, we've brought cryptocurrency and blockchain to every level of society. So what this means, Lynn, is you might not care for cryptocurrency. You never want to touch it. You don't have a cryptocurrency wallet. You don't trust the technology. You want to go into your bank on a Friday, hand your card over, get cash. And we built a framework where we allow you to have a business or to want to get paid in cryptocurrency. But you don't need to worry about what cryptocurrency it is. You don't need to worry about how it works. You just need to worry about the fact that you want to get 100 Rand or 1,000 Rand paid into your South African bank account. So we have the ability where you can invoice in any currency, and your payers or your customers can elect to pay you in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the major cryptocurrency payments. You won't ever have to own a wallet, and it'll automatically get paid into your traditional currency with no fees. Wow. That is a game changer for Africa. And it also means, if you are wanting to go buy a pair of, call it shoes from a vendor, you could be traveling internationally. You can scan their code, their YDPay code. It'll pop up on your phone. You can elect to either pay via credit card, debit card, or even a bank transfer. But more importantly, you could elect to pay via a cryptocurrency. It'll tell you, the shoes are 200 Kenyan shillings. You need to pay X number of Ethereum. You make that payment from your cryptocurrency wallet, and that vendor will be paid in their local currency without ever knowing about how you paid in the sense of what currency you used. But obviously, that whole ecosystem is built on trust, and for that to really work the way it needs to work, is, as I said, we need to adhere to the regulatory requirements. We don't want the cryptocurrency payments where there is an illicit flow of funds, and for that reason, we make sure that we go through the KYC and the AML checks to make sure that that transaction is as reputable as a transaction in the traditional payment space. And I think, and I'm hoping that's where cryptocurrency is heading. When it first came out, you could create a wallet, not even needed to have an email address or a name. You
Wow.
literally got a 128-bit string of some letters, and no one knew who you were, and you could trade, and that's why it got quite a bit of illicit trading, because from a fraud perspective, no one knew where the source of funds was, no one knew who I was, and I didn't have to provide any of that information. I want to say that the good news is it is moving away from that, and we're seeing almost all the exchanges now, when you register, you need to provide them, your name, your details, copy of your passport, proof of residence, and the exact same way you would with a bank. And that's obviously created a little bit of hesitancy within the cryptocurrency groups, where they were promised that it was completely outside of a big corporate managing you and telling you where you could spend your money, how you could spend it, and controlling it. And now we seem to be going kind of back again to the trust. And it's not that, there's distrust in the market, but ultimately, if you open up a loophole to money laundering, that's going to be used extensively.
Yeah. 100%. Wow, so many insights that you shared. And I can't forget the fact that you said there are over 10,000 different kinds of cryptocurrency. So, when you said that, I wanted to ask, are they all worth the same? What makes one person get Bitcoin or Ripple or Ethereum? What are the factors at play? That, because I know you already did speak to the supply and demand that actually speaks to the value of said cryptocurrency, but now I want to talk about how the different cryptocurrencies relate to each other.
So, just on that cryptocurrency number, I did a bit look up during our initial break, and it's now actually well past the 20,000 different currencies mark. So it's,
oh my goodness,
it's significantly growing. But ultimately, because it's driven completely by supply and demand, the cryptocurrencies that tend to have the greatest value tend to have the biggest following. And also they have what's known as a market capitalization. So essentially, the number of coins in the market times what their value will give an indication as to what that coin market really is worth. So call it I want to say the unicorns, or call it the top 15 traded currencies, tend to be those ones that ultimately just floated up to the top of the pile. There are some of them that are pegged to major market currencies. So USDT, USDC, purely by their name, they're 100% pegged to the United States dollar. They've had a little bit of a wobble in recent times. Suddenly, one of the coins went below $1. It created a lot of concern and uncertainty around how that coin would work, because even though they pegged, it's still driven by supply and demand. And if somebody dumps a significant number into the marketplace at a lower value to get out of the market, we see that tending to happen. But the kind of major currencies you're seeing at the moment, we've mentioned Bitcoin. They were the first to kind of hit the market. They've probably got the biggest market capitalization. At any given time, they've kind of valued it around about $500 billion.
Wow. I mean, I saw a Bitcoin ATM in Santon City the other day.
No, it's definitely, it's getting to mainstream. It's not quite there yet.
Okay.
But Bitcoin, $500 billion worth of call it a financial instrument out there. It's not small play anymore. The challenge is the rest of the market almost doesn't add up to that. So Ethereum is probably give or take around about half the value of Bitcoin. And then the remaining coins, probably I would say Ripple's probably about a quarter, maybe even more, the size of Ethereum. So the value of the coins diminishes very, 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 very quickly. Bitcoin's number one in the market by, almost like a Formula One race. They finished the race number one, and kind of the person coming second is still a lap behind, and then the person coming third is kind of a couple laps behind the person that's second. But kind of the Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, they kind of do dominate the market. But because it's digital, tomorrow we could wake up and there could be Lin's coin all of a sudden at more than Bitcoin. Once again, supply and demand.
Yeah. Exactly. And I guess that's why there are now 20,000 plus different ones. So I like the fact that people are still going for it and creating their own cryptocurrencies, even though, Bitcoin is standing head and shoulders above everybody else. So, I was just about to wrap up, but I would just like to emphasize the point that YDPay is able to take cryptocurrency and translate that into actual currency and vice versa. I think that is an absolute game changer, and I think that is just the perfect way to end off this episode for you guys to think about. So without further ado, thanks for listening to FinTalk with Alan Walker and Lynn Marape. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into cross-border payments from a cryptocurrency perspective. That's all for this episode, everybody. See you next time.